People across the nation and our state paused to honor those impacted by the attacks on September 11, 2001 at Civic Plaza in Albuquerque. People gathered at a special memorial honoring the lives lost and the heroes of that day. Somber bells toll began the ceremony. Emergency response personnel from several counties came to pay their respects, and a massive American flag hung suspended from two ladder trucks. As retired FDNY Lieutenant and 9/11 survivor Joe Torrio spoke about what he saw at Ground Zero.
I heard a roar, and I looked up. United Airlines Flight 175, the second jet, came right over my head. I was the only one underneath that jet. And at that point, I realized we were under a terrorist attack.
It was 13 years ago and 2,000 miles away, but what happened on 9/11 hits very close to home for some New Mexico firefighters.
They were part of a specialized team sent to the Pentagon to rescue, recover, and investigate what the terrorists did that day. Nancy Laughlin is here with their story.
Well, Shelley, a lot of the team members who were part of the Task Force 1 are still with the fire department today, including the chief. He says because of what he saw firsthand after 9/11, he wants to make sure his children and others never forget.
It was something on that day that seemed surreal. American airplanes used as missiles, flown into buildings, including the Pentagon. Within hours after that nightmare, a team of 60 New Mexico firefighters and emergency workers went to the Pentagon to help with the recovery and investigation. AFD Chief David Downey, who was then a lieutenant, was part of the team called New Mexico Task Force 1.
Since it was a crime scene, we worked closely with the FBI to protect evidence if we came across anything.
For Downey and the others, it was an investigation, a mission they would never forget.
We would spend hours at a time in the Pentagon doing the salvage and recovery operations. And at the moment when you were doing the work, it seemed like any other fire. And then you would step out of the building and realize again where you were and that the United States had been attacked.
And on 9/11, it was firefighters who were among the hardest hit. 343 of them lost their lives. Every day for the past 13 years, the Albuquerque fire chief has worn this band as a reminder. And every September 11th, he wears another with the name of a New York firefighter he knew.
I have young children, and I want them to remember what September 11th was, because it was a very historic day in our country's history, and we need to remember the lives of those that were lost, who at that moment were serving our country.
The team was deployed to the Pentagon for 4 days. This specialized unit has also been called to assist in the space shuttle disaster and Hurricane Katrina.
The team is made up of not only Albuquerque firefighters and rescue crews, but emergency crews from throughout New Mexico. Many Albuquerque firefighters headed to downtown Albuquerque today to do a stair climb honoring their fallen brothers. AFD firefighters took on the Bank of Albuquerque staircases. Dressed in full emergency gear, they ran up about 20 flights of stairs 5 times, which is of course about 100 flights of stairs. They weren't alone. At the county building down the street, people warmed up in Civic Plaza before completing a shorter stair climb.
I feel very honored to be walking in remembrance of people who gave the ultimate sacrifice, who rushed into a building probably knowing and with no thought to themselves.
Those who participated in the stair climb also wore pictures on their backs, honoring people who lost their lives that day.
Veterans here are offering performances aimed at deepening people's understanding of the armed forces. The free show starts tonight at 7 at the South Broadway Cultural Center. According to the Albuquerque Journal, the Telling Albuquerque presentations are part of the nationwide performing arts project. If you can't make it tonight, there was another show Saturday evening or Sunday afternoon. We posted information at as seen on 7 at KOAT.com.
Launching commercial space travel from New Mexico may take even longer than expected.